Okay, so this is a test for Intro to Cinema 4D, and we're starting now. Okay, so this is the Cinema 4D palette. This thing in the middle here is called the viewport. All right, this is where you can see the models and interact with them. The first thing that you'll be doing in here is just learning how to use some basic shapes. Okay, so if we click up here with these little blue boxes, these are called primitive shapes. And if you click in, you can see that there's cubes, spheres, cones, cylinders. Using 3D animation software is just like using building blocks at the beginning stages of it. So if we click on the cube, it'll pop in a cube right in our space. Okay, and this allows us to interact with it. We have the green arrow, which is the y-axis, the red arrow, which is the x-axis, and then the blue one, which is the z. So those are the three dimensions that we're dealing with. Up on the top of the viewport up here, there are a few buttons. This one that looks like a compass, if you click and hold it down and move your cursor back and forth, you can move the camera around the object. Okay. This one, if we click and hold it, we can zoom in and out of the object. Okay. And then this one, if we click and hold it, we can rotate around the object like that. So that allows us to change our view of the object in how we see it. Okay. Right now, we could. This is what's called the editor mode. It allows us to see the arrows, okay, the shape, but we just see this grid as the background and that sort of horizon. Up here you have the renderer buttons. The one on the far left allows you to render it in the view. So if we click on this, it'll give you a quick rendering and show you what the object is. Okay. So at any time, if you want to see how it looks in real life, or how it would look to be rendered, you can just click on that button to view. And if you click back in the window, it'll bring you back to the editor mode. Over here, we have what's called the objects palette. All right, and so whenever you have an object that you've created in the scene, it will give you a placement of the object here. So when we click on that, it makes it active. If we click outside of it, it's not active anymore. So we can't do anything to it unless we've clicked on the object and it's active. Okay. Down below you have the attributes manager, which is down here, and this gives us some of the basic coordinates. So right now we have the size, which is 200 inches by 200 inches by 200 inches, and the segments, which are 1 by 1 by 1, which means each of these segments is only one shape. We can change that. We could make this 3, and it would divide it up into 3 sections there. Or here, 3, divide it there, here, and you see that divide gives us more sections to use. So later on, when we start to manipulate shapes, you could click on individual sections and allow that to manipulate as you go. Now, the first thing that I think would be good for us to do is to just use some basic text. Okay, and to do that, we could get rid of this cube. Let's just click on it and delete it. And in this case, what we'll do is we'll use what's called a spline. And a spline is just literally a line drawing in space that doesn't have any shape or form, but we can make it have dimensions. Right? Same way in Illustrator, you can draw with points and shapes and lines like that. You can do that in this program too. So if I start out by just clicking on the text tool, if I just go that over here and I click on the text tool, it's going to give us just a generic text, okay, the word text, right? So we have the object here, we see it here, but right now this doesn't have any depth at all. So if I click on it to view it in the renderer, we don't see anything. All right. The first step is we could make this text anything we want. Right, so I could make it my name if I wanted to by typing down below in the attributes manager. So right here, it used to say text, and now I changed it to say my name, Joseph. If I hit return, oops, if I click out of the box, rather, it would change that. You can also change the font, so you can choose whatever sort of font you want. You can be creative as much as you want. You can change it to a different sort of font. Okay, you can change the shape of it, or the height of it. So right now it's 200 inches. I can make it 300 inches if I wanted to make it bigger or smaller. You can change the horizontal spacing. Right now it's 0 inches. If I made it 50, it would stretch it out. Right, so you can play with some of those basic elements to manipulate it. So that's the first thing, is to maybe start with some text that you can play with, and just make that an interesting combination. So now that we have the text that we want, all right, I'm just going to move my viewport here a little bit there. We need to do what's called an extrusion, which means taking that drawing and making it a three-dimensional shape. So we're going to move to the next box over, which is the Nurbs palette. Okay, and in this case we're going to use what's called the Extrude Nurbs. Right, we're just going to click on that, and it's going to bring over into the Objects Manager this extrusion. And what this does is it allows you to take that flat drawing and give it dimension, give it some depth. So to do that, we just simply take the text and we drop it into the Extrude Nurbs. Okay, so you make it. This is called a parent-child relationship. So the Extrude Nurbs is the parent. I take it and I drop it into there. And when you drop it in, you notice there's a little L that sort of comes out of that. Tells you that it's inside of that. And then what happens, you see, is that it gives us dimension. Right? It literally extrudes along that z-axis. And we can see that here. If you click on the Extrude Nurbs, the movement right here is going to be 0 up, 0 sideways, but 20 inches depth. Okay? And you can change that. If you wanted it to be more, you could have it be 50 or whatever you want it to be, and give it more depth. So when we render this out, you can see now we have a three-dimensional object. Okay. So the first step for you is to work with some text, three-dimensional text in space, and play around a little bit with combinations of different, text images. If you wanted to create another one, all you need to do is just go back, grab another text object, click on it, and make it say whatever you want. And oops. Click on the box. There we go. And the same sort of thing. Another Nurb. Extrude it by dropping it in there, and then playing around. And then so now we have two objects, right? This is the important part here too. We have two objects. We want to move the Smolinski to the background. Let's say you have some tools at the top. This is the Move tool, which looks like a compass as well. That's sort of arrows. And you see when I scroll over the arrows, they highlight. So if I want to move it back in space, if I have selected the Move tool, I just click on that blue arrow and I can drag it back. Okay, or I can drag it down in space, or so you can move it. You can also scale it with this tool. You can make it grow taller, shrink it down, control it in that sort of way. And then you can also rotate it, so you could have it change its position by its rotation as well. So between the move, the scale, and the rotate tool, you can create a combination of different texts in 3 dimensions, and then also change the camera angle for an interesting viewing of it, so that when we render it out, we get some things happening. Okay, so the first part of this assignment will be, once the software is loaded, play around with getting some 3-dimensional text in a file, and then maybe a few different words together, and see what we can do with some combinations of that. To save it, just as usual, you can save as, create a folder, and C4D, oops, and then just save it, whatever you want to name it. The extension is going to be C4D, and that will allow you to open it back up just as you've seen it. Okay. And then save it. So if you can get that started, then maybe next week we can look at playing around with some different text, and I'll show you how to use some materials and stuff like that. Okay?
Okay.
And there's our timer. Perfect.